Good evening. I'd like to call this evening's King's Local School District Board of Education combination work session and public meeting to order. Mr. Morrow, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Phillips.
Here.
Ms.
Good
Groff.
evening. I'd like to
Ms.
call
Allen.
this evening's King's
Mr.
Local
Skrull.
School District
Here.
Board of
Mr. Beltran.
Education here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a motion to approve this evening's agenda?
I'll make that motion. I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Cowan.
Yes.
Ms. Phillips.
Yes.
Ms. Groff.
Yes.
Mr. Skrull.
Yes.
Mr. Beltran.
Yes. Next, I'd like to request a motion to enter into executive session. Oh, did we update that?
Yeah.
I am so sorry.
Brash. Sorry.
Apologies. Next on the agenda are reports and presentations for the evening. Mr. Sears.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Beltran. We are fortunate to have our Raise reps from Kings High School here this evening, Grace Jones and Faithlyn Herthel, to provide us an update on all the incredible things happening at Kings High School. So, ladies, welcome.
Hi, my name is Grace Jones and beside me is Faithlyn Herthel. We are both members of our Raise team. In case you didn't see us last month, we are here on behalf of the Raise team to talk about all the awesome things that go on at the high school.
What is RAISE? So just a quick reminder, RAISE is the PBIS team here at Kings High School. And as a team, it's our job to share the message of respect, accountability, integrity, service, and enthusiasm.
CASEL credits. If a student is caught demonstrating any of these Raise traits by a staff member or Raise team member, they can receive a CASEL credit. A CASEL credit is a ticket that students can use to win a small prize or a piece of candy during lunch on Wednesdays. There have been 246 CASEL credits redeemed so far this year.
Our outstanding artists. The National Art Honor Society painted faces at a football game on October 28th. And on December 5th is the Community Art Night. And these nights are for King's families to come together and enjoy a free activity involving the arts. Students are also making a coloring book for the Dragonfly Foundation. And this coloring book, the coloring book projects will be a collaboration between the digital media arts and all of the visual art teachers. And a big thank you to the KHS art teachers for devoting their time to our students.
On another note, band. The KHS marching band is the MSBA champion. This is comparable to a state championship. On November 7th, the band hosted their community band night at the stadium. They performed their final band performance for the community. Over Thanksgiving break, the band will travel to Disney World to perform and learn from Disney musicians.
National Honor Society. National Honor Society is offered to juniors and seniors with a 3.85 GPA who demonstrate the 4 pillars of scholarship, leadership, service, and character. Recently, the NHS members put together a coin drive to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and together we raised over $500. And the sophomore class won this and got to enjoy a recess outside.
Spanish National Honor Society. Spanish National Honor Society inducted 59 new members at their induction ceremony a few weeks ago. They now have a total of 96 members.
Clubs. German students and their friends got to celebrate Oktoberfest in King's German Club. There were more than 40 students that came together and got to eat authentic German food, got to sing songs and play games and learn the traditions and history of Oktoberfest. They even got to dance the traditional chicken dance. And Frog Coing even wore the traditional journal to the festivities, which you can see in the top left picture.
Athletics, cross-country star Sam Thomas competed in the OHSAA Regional Championship and was only one spot away from qualifying for state. Pretty impressive. The men's soccer team finished their season at the sectional runner-up. For the first time in 20 years, the Kings cheerleaders are going to Disney for nationals. Also for athletics, the Kings football team beat reigning state champs Winton Woods 23-16. They'll play Anderson in the regional final this Friday at Mason High School. The Lady Knights volleyball team won their first ever Division I volleyball sectional championship in school history. Pretty impressive of our school athletes and fall athletes. Our senior athletes. On November 9th, we honored 4 athletes during the formal athletic signing ceremony. Congratulations to Melanie Swiker, Abby Ron, Avery Tumler, and Riley Wells. Melanie will be attending Ohio University to swim. Abby Rawlings will be attending Otterbein University to play basketball. Riley Wells will be attending Houston Christian University to play basketball as well. And Avery Tumler will be attending Gannon University for acrobatics and tumbling.
Be the Difference Day. The freshman class had the opportunity to sign up for Be the Difference Day, which is formerly known as Redo Day. And this program was designed to unite students with members of the school and community and to empower them to carry the themes of the program, back to the greater school population. Juniors, seniors, and KHS staff also had the opportunity to serve as small group leaders, and it was truly an impactful day.
Senior Monster Mash. The seniors and staff were able to participate in the Monster Mash. Seniors won prizes for Best Individual Costume, Best Duo, Best Group, and Scariest Costume. I personally am a senior, and this is one of the best days for seniors. You look up, as a freshman, you get to see all these cool seniors dress up, and it's really fun to be able to do that as a senior. So here's some of the costumes.
That right?
Food Truck Fridays. So this year, for the first time, KHS PTO organized food trucks. So this is where seniors and KHS staff members can purchase some food from the food trucks each Friday if they want to.
The Halloween Haunted House. Mr. Shields' Engineering 3 class put on a Halloween haunted house. They spent over 2 months collaborating on this frightening masterpiece. They used mini computers that program themselves to trigger different sensors connected to a pneumatic cylinders, which then triggered to the props to jump out at people at the right time. I also went in this one, super cool. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you so much for giving us the time to let us share some more of our favorite memories from the school year. And we will be back next month to update you on all of the fun and exciting things happening here at our castle.
Thank you, ladies. Next on the agenda is public participation. King's Local Board of Education encourages all parents, staff members, and community members to attend meetings and encourages visitors to participate in their meetings. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to state his or her reason for addressing the board. We ask that speakers avoid personal attacks on individuals during their public address to the board. If an individual has an issue with an employee, we ask that you request a private meeting with the superintendent or that employee's direct supervisor. Please keep in mind that Board of Education meetings are held so that the board can conduct their business in public The board president is the spokesman for the board and may need to consult with other board members in order to respond to the public. If a question from the public can be answered immediately, it may be. However, if time is needed to study the issue, the board may choose to make a statement at a later date. Our first speaker this evening is Colleen Sheeter.
Good evening. I just really wanted to tell these young ladies how much I really enjoy these updates. So I hope you guys keep coming back, and the updates are great. And then I would implore the board to consider, if anybody else shows up that wanted to speak in public participation, to make an exception, because there was some confusion around the time for, and I had an exchange with an administrator earlier today, and it was clear that there was confusion on when the meeting started and how it was publicized. So I hope you guys would give some consideration if there's anybody who wants to speak. Thank you.
Next on the agenda, our speaker is Laura Griffith.
Hi, my name is Laura Griffiths. My husband, Matt, and I have 4 children that have the privilege of attending King's. We have a freshman, a 7th grader, a 4th grader, and a 4-year-old who is thrilled to now have the chance to attend full-day kindergarten at KME next year. I was a 1st and 2nd grade teacher in Lebanon for 13 years. Around the same time I started staying home with my kids, I got a phone call from someone in the King's community that I didn't know very well yet. They had heard I was home with my kids now, but still had a very big passion for anything school related. It was 2016, and that is when I started getting involved with the school campaigns at King's. Anyone who knows me knows I am not into politics. However, I do believe in schools and doing what is right. I helped with the bond issues as well, and I had the honor to help again on the King's Levy Committee for the 2022 levy. I just wanted to publicly thank every single person who helped with this campaign. Without each community member's effort, big or small, we couldn't have passed this levy. Whether you simply talked to neighbors or friends about the levy, donated to the campaign, adopted voters through our Mine+9 effort, put up a yard sign in your yard, cheered on voters at the polls, or took on a bigger role with the campaign, thank you. Your efforts, time, and care for the King's Local School District and our community are appreciated and valued greatly. The election results were very humbling, with 54% for the levy. The King's Citizens for Quality Education PAC, who puts on school campaigns like Yes for Kings, will continue to support the schools through positivity in the community. That being said, there was a fair amount of our community who voted against the levy. I can understand and sympathize with why this was the case for some. For many, it was due to taxes being too high or people on fixed incomes. For some, it was just because they didn't know the facts or the district's incredible values well enough. One thing I think we can all agree on is something does have to change at the state level with the way King's is funded. With so many school issues on the ballot across the state, it is obvious to see that something is terribly wrong with the state school funding model. I'm encouraging community members on both sides of the levy to take these same concerns to the state level. Our district and the school board is working hard at this too, but truly the only way change will happen is if the state is overwhelmed with our community fighting together for what is right. I am proud of our community for getting out to vote. And again, I am extremely proud of all the individuals who helped in this effort. Thank you. Thank you, King's community, for allowing the King's Local School District to continue to do what is best for kids.
Our next speaker is Louise Goodman.
First of all, I didn't realize that they had changed the time, so I appreciate you allowing me to go ahead and speak tonight. Usually I like to talk as opposed to read, but because I didn't have the extra half hour to rehearse, I'm going to have to read. These are my opinions and my opinions only. The levy passed on lies, scare tactics, fears, emotion, and omission of critical information. There is no integrity, moral obligation, or transparency to the residents from this administration and board. At least one board member extracted and published page 1 of a 33-page document on a public social media in an effort to withhold Plan B from the public. Plan B was outlined on page 4 of that document, but never shown. The board and the administration withheld the Plan B from the public. The board also allowed the administration to use manipulation and deception with misinformation about the so-called fiscal oversight. It is not fiscal danger or fiscal caution, or as Kings likes to say, fiscal distress. The Ohio State Board of Education said Kings is not only not in danger, but the facts were intentionally manipulated by Kings. Instead of directing the public to the original source of Plan B, it was withheld from the public. Instead, both the administration and the board said busing would be cut, 70 teachers laid off, sports would be pay to play, some classes would be cut, and the district would go to half-day kindergarten. All untrue facts according to Plan B, which was presented to the Ohio Board of Education in March of 2022. But the letter in its entirety was truncated by a board member and admitted that information from the public. Is this what we call transparency in Kings? I also have another issue with transparency. I am still having a hard time getting over the process that was used to hire a new superintendent. Either the board nor the applicant followed the official interviewing and hiring protocol for this position. 27 people initially applied for this position. 3 of them were made the final cut. 2 weeks after the application period was closed, a 4th person was interviewed, came back the next day to fill out the application after accepting the position ahead of time. While 3 other applications who followed the rules did everything correctly, now they didn't even have a fair chance of being selected. And this is what Kings calls transparency. The Kings community should be made aware of what transpired behind the scenes that would allow 3 candidates who followed everything and did it all correctly to be overlooked in favor of someone who turned in an application after they were interviewed and after the deadline for submitting an application. Fair is fair. If we expect our children to learn how to navigate society by following the rules, should we expect any less from our leaders and the school board and an administration? This person is now the current superintendent of Kings. This is why I personally have a hard time when I hear the words honesty, trust, and transparency from any board member or administrative person in the Kings School District. Once again, I have 2 wonderful kids who graduated from Kings. They're both doing fantastic in their careers.
That's your time.
And I have never said anything negative about their education. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just for the record state again that with regards to the superintendent search, with regards to the information that we provided during the election cycle, we have a duty and a responsibility to be transparent. It's against the law for us to provide you with inaccurate information, and I stand by all of the information that was presented. It's not a discussion, Mrs. Goodman. I'm making a comment now. Public participation's over. Moving forward, approval items with regards to the treasurer. Mr. Morrow, you have anything you'd like to share?
Thank you. Items 1 through 3 are the typical monthly approval of the minutes from the prior month's meetings. I hope the board had a chance to take a look at those prior to the meeting. Number 4 is the 5-year forecast. I've posted a rather large document on board docs that I hope the board's had a chance to review. I have a short presentation just to touch on some of the highlights and give an update since we talked through it last. So what is the forecast? Twice a year, every school district in Ohio has to file what they're forecasting as far as money coming in and expenses going out for the next 5 years. This is updated twice a year because we all know things change pretty quickly. So along those lines, I also update the Board of Education monthly and through board docs to the public as assumptions change and things change. So what's the same since we last presented on this back in May? the big thing, our state funding is still projected to be flat. If you look at the graph down there, it's pretty telling that there's not much movement from where we're at right now out 5 years. And at the end of that 5 years, the new fair funding plan will be enacted fully in Ohio if the legislature decides to go through with it. And it doesn't do anything for Kings. Oh, go back for me. Thank you. Rising personnel cost. So we build in what we expect we're going to have to pay for staffing costs as far as raises, and also as staff gains experience, they gain additional money. Inflation. I'm sure everybody's seen on the news that we're still dealing with very high inflation that's affecting the cost of many of the goods and services, and small enrollment increases. So we look at this a few ways. Do we see large developments coming in? What's the historical trends at Kings? And then also a somewhat scientific way of looking at what our average kindergarten class is compared to births in the district to come up with a number of what we think the enrollment increases will be. I've gone slightly under our historical trend just to be conservative in my estimate. The last few years, 5 years, we've added over 75 kids a year on average. I've built in closer to 30, just the conservative nature. Go ahead. So what has changed? We passed an operating levy that's going to generate roughly $7.5 million every year. So it's really changed the financial picture of the district throughout the whole cycle of this forecast. If you look at side by side with the last one, payroll base increases to market. So historically, my predecessor and myself in May, we built in a 1% base increase for staffing, essentially raises throughout the life of the forecast. I've updated that to 2% for our projections, and that's just based on market. There's other districts in the area that have contracts that go out further than our current one, and their average is over 2%. So it's hard to realistically build in a 1 when the market's saying it's closer to 2. Lower than projected health insurance renewal. So this year we had a 4.4% increase, which is the lowest Kings has seen in years. A lot of hard work by my predecessor and the insurance committee went into that. So that trended down our overall insurance costs. And special education costs, they continue to rise. I'll touch on it a little bit more here in a minute. So property taxes, that's our biggest source of revenue, as we've been talking about for months at this point. I'm projecting little valuation increases in residential and commercial just based on the current economic conditions. Don, if you could hit it one more time. You're good. But overall, it doesn't have a big impact on our district finances. I like the column right in the middle. It says change. You can see that's the tax rate going down every year as valuation increases, because as we talked about throughout the levy cycle, we don't get additional funds when home values increase. The tax rate goes down.
Could you explain, it says tax year 21, but I know we're in fiscal year.
We're in 23. Yes. So the tax years, the first thing is they're run by calendar year. So it's slightly different than our year. Our year is July 1 to June 30th. The other thing is people pay property taxes 1 year behind. So tax year 21 is collected in calendar year 22. So big timing difference. And that really shows up when you're looking at the levy that just passed. So we won't see a full year of that levy collections until calendar year 23, but our fiscal year 24.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes sense.
Our other big revenue source, state funding. I thought this graph really jumped out. I mentioned before, flat funding. We're not projecting increases from the state. And this is the current model showing how much more the state's giving us by year than what their formula is telling us. So if you look out to 27, they're still giving us roughly $11 million, but under the current formula and our projections, their formula is saying we should be giving you $4.6 million less than the 11 million that we are giving you. So we'll touch on this once again a little bit later on, but I just found that to be a pretty strong graphic to show that that we don't get a fair amount from the state, and the current funding formula says they should be giving us less. So personnel, as I alluded to, the big difference here is the 2% base increase. So staff gets raises in two ways. One, they gain a year of experience, and that's called a step. And the average here is about 1.5% to 2% per year every time the staff makes that 1 year of experience. And granted, not every single person gets additional money when they gain experience, but if you look at the district as a whole, that's about where we're at. So I updated the forecast to show a 2% base raise on top of any steps. As I said, we had built in 1% for a while, and it's just not, it didn't seem realistic to build in when the market's telling us 1% isn't the going rate. And then insurance, I know I mentioned that we had the lowest increase for years at 4.4%, but the conservative nature of this, I build in a 9% every year, which is what the current market rate is. And that's just a conservative approach. I hope we're at 4.4 or less every year, but for forecasting our expenses, we typically go with what that market rate is. So purchase service, this is our second biggest expense behind personnel. Kind of twofold on the student specific services. We saw increased cost because of inflationary pressures and the service providers having to increase the amount that they were charging because they're having to pay people more. And then we also saw increased services in general. So it was a kind of a double whammy there as far as inflation and just remaining to have a high need. Go back one more. Yep, thank you. No, you're fine. And then transportation. I wanted to point out that this is the last year of a 5-year contract with Peterman. In that 5-year contract, it had built in that we couldn't get more than a 4% increase year over year. So that contract's gone. We're fearful that that number is going to go up pretty substantially after these last couple of years. So we've taken the step of working with other vendors, and Mr. Lucky's created and nearly completed an RFP. So we'll be getting additional bids outside of Peterman to make sure that we're getting good service and also at a competitive price. So in summary, when you look at everything, we're in a lot better shape than we were in May of 2020, but there's still work for the administration and Board of Education to do. If we want to achieve the goal of long-term financial stability, which has been talked about by the board ever since the first time I met with them back in February, I think it was. So that's really the goal here. If you can go to the next slide. So a couple recommendations based on that being our goal. One, the district doesn't have a cash balance policy. It's a pretty simple policy, and when you read it, it basically says the board has told the superintendent and treasurer, once you hit these metrics as far as cash balance, you have to do something, and we're going to hold you accountable that you will do something. It's pretty common in schools for that policy to be out there. So I think that the board needs to work with the administration to create that document that holds us accountable. And that was also one of the recommendations from the state of Ohio. So we'll have further discussion on that.
Is that something you have experience with?
Yes, I created one. My last district didn't have it either. So I created one there, and it was ready for board approval when I came to King's. So, yep, absolutely. And then long-term planning. Couple different things about this. I know the board's been talking about the need for the community and the district to work with our state folks to try to potentially change or improve our standing as far as state funding. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, which is why I consider it a long-term planning. But I look forward to having more conversations with the Board of Education along those lines. And then number two, coming up with some long-term cost savings measures. I would recommend we pass the levy to generate increased revenues, but we still need to work collaboratively, community, board, and administration, to find other ways to be creative to continue to reduce our long-term spend to help achieve that stability that we're looking for. That's it. That's it. Thank you.
Questions?
Number 5, financial items. Those are the typical monthly financials, and you see they've been updated to reflect the updated forecast. Not substantially different than we've seen kind of all year and that we've looked at since the spring. Public records log, link to the website on here. We're in pretty good shape. I've got one remaining that needs responded to. I've responded a few times already, and we just keep providing information to fulfill that request. So we'll continue to keep up with those in a timely manner, as timely as possible. If there's no other questions, I ask the board to approve 1 through 6.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
The two things to work on,
Mhm.
cash balance, board policy, and long-term planning. Tell me what you think that long-term planning looks like. Like, when are we going to start working on that?
Mr. Sears and I have had discussions about starting that process basically immediately. We're already talking about it, but first of the year is kind of when we're looking at basically working with the board to come up with a proposal of how we plan on doing that. And that'll take significant board input as far as what you guys want to see as far as how that looks and how we go about doing that. But by the first of the year, we should be running essentially.
Okay.
We need to do this now. It's not something that we can push off for a year. As I said, that was the first thing we talked about after the levy passage was what's next. We got the additional revenue, but we know there's still work to do.
Okay, thank you. I think there's ways we can tighten the belt and get, make this money stretch longer than 3 years. I don't want to go back to our taxpayers if we don't have to. This was that was not easy to do. And like, I think we should get to work immediately. Thank you, Mrs. Griffiths, for your comments about reaching out to state representatives, because I think as a community, no matter what side of this you are on, that's the work we need to do as a community, to let people know that this can't keep going on. So thank you. And I just appreciate all the work everybody's doing, but I'm ready to get to work on this and in a better situation for a long term.
Absolutely. Us too.
Any more questions with regards to items 1 through 6 or comments?
I did have one comment. Mr. Morrow, I really appreciate the work you put into that 5-year forecast explanation and the direction that you're working with us towards. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
With that, Mr. Morrow, could you please call the roll for items 1 through 6? Motions, and I have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom.
Yes.
And then item 8, Anthem had some additional funds for us to use towards the wellness event. It turned out to be pretty well attended. As I mentioned before, we had all of our vendors on site. We had 80 people of roughly 350 actually do the testing on site. So hopefully some people, hopefully everybody's healthy, but those who aren't got some results that maybe could help them make decisions such as seeing a doctor. So we're pretty excited about that. First year, and next year we hope to have a better turnout now that kind of word's out that Anthem's paying for some nice prizes, and it takes 5 to 7 minutes to get the check done.
Any questions, comments on the wellness? May I have a motion to approve item 8 under the treasurer's agenda?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion. Mr. Morrow, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Skrull,
I'm abstaining from this vote.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan.
Yes.
Before we move on with the next agenda item, we did have 2 community members come in, and with the confusion about the speaking tonight, I'd like to see if we can offer them the chance to
Absolutely.
participate.
Very nice.
Okay, all right.
Would we like, you need a motion to modify the agenda so we can circle back?
They said they're not going to speak.
Oh, they're not going
No.
to speak. Okay. All right. Next on the agenda are approval items from the superintendent, Mr. Sears.
Yes, just one field trip this evening for our dance team to travel to Orlando, Florida in March.
Any questions or comments? Is there a Board of Education invitation?
Thank you.
Sounds the right time to go to Florida.
May I have a motion to approve the field trip?
Make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow, could you call the roll?
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Skrull,
Yes,
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom.
Yes. Next on the agenda are approval items for the assistant superintendent concerning HR and business related items. Mr. Spinner.
Thank you, President Belfrom. King's Board of Education, 2 items up for approval this evening. First, personnel items. We have staff resignations and retirements, new staff members, staff miscellaneous items, supplementals and stipends, and temporary employment. I would like to point out, we have one retirement on the agenda this evening, Mrs. Ray Mitchell. Mrs. Mitchell was hired in 2001 as a member of our food service department at Columbia Intermediate School. The following year, she moved into a paraprofessional role where she served at Kings Mills Elementary and J.F. Burns Elementary, respectively. In 2015, Ray was offered and pursued and accepted an opportunity to work as a general secretary for J.F. Burns, where she retired with roughly 20 years of service to the Kings local school district. Mrs. Montag, her current principal, had this to say about Ray. What an honor and a privilege it has been to work with her. She is dedicated, hardworking, and does everything with a smile. Ray will be dearly missed, but we are excited to hear about all of her great new adventures in retirement. Congratulations, Ray, and thank you for your service to the Kings local school district.
Any questions, comments? May I have a motion to approve the agenda items for the assistant superintendent regarding HR and business?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Mr. Morrow, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Mr. Skrull,
yes,
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom.
Yes. Please continue.
A couple more items on there. You'll see the payment in lieu of, and it's very similar to the ones that we've seen in the past. Just had 2 late applicants. And then number 4, to bring to your attention, there's an opportunity. We've been approached by a cell phone tower company. This enables them to go out and see what the opportunities are for us. There is no commitment from us to have to do this. It's just a revenue source that we could generate. It would be based on the number of carriers on the tower that would tell us the cash opportunity that would be there. The required space is about 40 by 40 feet. One of the areas that they've looked at very hard is right around here. From coverage, they've gone through some heat maps with us to show opportunities that we may have in the district. We've gone back to them with some areas where we were feeling lack of coverage. So this gives them the ability to look at all of our addresses of all of our properties, including the bus garage, just to see if there's interest from the 4 major cell providers to get on a tower to provide service. A big thing for us is safety and security. You get in some of our buildings and some of our locations and where the cell service is not very good. It's not a good thing. So we would like to bolster that with this as another benefit on top of the revenue source. So this would just give us the ability to go out to providers and see if there's any interest.
How much revenue would that generate for the district?
Depends on how many people are on the tower. There's 2 on the tower. I believe it was about 250,000 over a 30-year period. It's not as lucrative as you may think, but it's a revenue source that we don't have currently, so we need to look into it.
When you say people, you mean cellular providers?
Correct.
Okay.
It was one of those things when they approached Mr. Lucky and I, we know that there's dead spots in all of the buildings and here. So they said, hey, if you move forward with talking to us about this, you're not telling us, yes, you can build one on the school's property. It just sees if it's even an option for us to do anything. So in addition to the clearing up dead spots, they also give you a little bit of money just to have it. It's not game-changing money, but it's kind of a win-win thing if it's in a place and a location that the board and community sees that they don't have an issue with.
And are they only looking to do 1 tower, or will there be multiple?
They'll look at all of our properties, and they have a program that gives them the ability to measure the service in the area. So they basically come to us first, say, hey, do you have 40 by 40 locations on your properties that are available? Then they go to the cell service folks to say, hey, do you have interest? As the network continues to go towards the 5G, they need more towers to be able to do that.
Okay.
So next step is they're going to come. What's the next step on this?
So they'll start digging in with the 4 major providers to see what their interest is at our addresses. Eliminate the ones where they don't have any interest, and then dig into, hey, where could we envision that happening? They showed us some examples, like an example for one. I don't know if it will work for us. So, but using one of your light poles at a football stadium, drive the pole up taller, mount the lights on the pole. You take up the same ground space for the pole, but you add that cell tower to it.
Gotcha.
So pretty creative ways of adding those services to the area.
Mr. Bender, did you want to?
Definitely. One final item, board policies, first reading. Every quarter, I have the opportunity to meet with Dr. Nolan Burkhart from Neola to review the attached board policy updates, inviting in members of our team when and where necessary. It is important to note that of the 21 policies up for a first reading tonight, all of them are revisions of policies we have previously adopted. Minor changes, however, have been made in language and terminology, or updates in response to modifications made in state or federal law and Ohio Revised Code, thus requiring additional approval. Anything highlighted in green on these revisions is an update, and anything in red is a deletion. Would like to point out policy 2280 in regards to our preschool program, and policy 5460.01 diploma deferral were revised to keep them consistent with state or federal law and ORC. Policy 2413 career advising now further outlines ways in which students and their families
can offset the cost of post-secondary education options already provided by the district. All other policies include minor updates in language and terminology.
Thank you, Mr. Spinner.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Lucky. Any questions regarding the policy review? And I see we don't have any items this evening for Mrs. Martin and Mr. Freeman.
Quickly,
Okay,
to put a
please.
shout out towards our professional development day on Monday for our certified staff. The professional development team has been working since last March to plan this day as a conference style with sessions and a keynote and a little bit of wellness fun. The building's getting together, so we're excited to have that Monday, and we'll be back to share with you next month how it went.
Sounds great. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the public hearing for rehiring retired staff. Do you need me to read this, Mr. Morrow?
No, you do not. It was published in the Journal News and it's out on board docs.
Okay.
But we do need, if anybody would like to speak about this, they have the opportunity.
Absolutely. If we have anyone who'd like to speak regarding the public hearing for rehiring retired staff, it's the opportunity. All of you.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yes, it's a public hearing. Yes.
Could
you go to the microphone for me, Mrs. Sheeter?
Could you guys give us some insight as to why there has to be a public hearing on this? So I understand from what little research I've done on this process that many states disallow this process because it's controversial. That's about as far as I've gotten in my research. So if you can kind of explain a little bit about maybe the reason other states have decided that this is not going to be legal to rehire into the same school district.
Can't speak to why it would be illegal as far as why we do it this way. It's written in Ohio Revised Code that we have to put notice in the paper. We have to allow public to discuss it. And then it gets approved by the board if they decide to approve it. I don't know why another state would not allow it or call it illegal, because somebody with a lot of experience gets paid more than someone with little experience. And these people have a lot of experience, and then we bring them back for less money. So it costs us less when we rehire somebody. So I'm not sure why another state it would be illegal.
Mrs. Goodman.
I just want to say a couple more things. Number one, I'd like to request a conference with Mr. Sears and you, Mr. Belfram, and one other person to maybe clear up some of the things that really upset me as a concerned person. I'd like to have that. So if that's possible, let me know. I would like you and Mr. Sears and this one other person. And I'll decide who that other person is. I know who that other person is going to be. I'll let you know who that other person is. The other thing is, you guys have always accused us of hating kids. The public that comes here accuses us of hating kids. We don't hate kids. What we're trying to do is make the school district fair to everyone and be transparent. It is not a transparent school district. I'm sorry. There's too many things. You still deny we have
Mrs. Goodman,
but we do.
This public notice is with regards to rehiring retired staff.
Okay, well,
It's not.
Facts as to
It's
what
not a
it says.
continuation of your public participation. It is specific to this item. If you have no concerns or things to share with respect to this item, Mrs. Goodman, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you, Superintendent Sears, and another party, and we can have this discussion.
Okay,
But with regards to our agenda, madam,
okay,
this is what we're discussing right now.
just trying to make peace for everybody, not just one side of the people who attend Kings.
I completely understand that.
These taxes, let everybody have a fair say. Thank you.
Next on the agenda are items presented by the board. Our first item is the January 2023 organizational meeting. We need to set a date for that meeting. Like to know what date works for everyone.
I'll just
Go
say
ahead,
that we
Mr.
have to
Morrow.
have this done prior to January 15th, according to Ohio law. The 10th is the second Tuesday of the month, which sticks with what the board typically meets. I'm just throwing that out there.
I have that down as a work session. Is that true? Or
I don't believe the calendar's been set, but it
Yeah.
could be wrong.
I might be.
That's what we've typically done.
Okay, but
that
it's-
will
maybe
probably
I just
be
put it
when
in.
we have,
Probably
Okay.
continuing.
yeah, that's probably when we'll have our work session for the year, the first
Okay.
one, and we can have our organizational meeting prior to that night. Typically what we've done, if am I correct on that?
And in the organizational meeting, we will set the calendar for the year. So
Gotcha.
you probably do what I did, which is
Just put it in.
like
Yeah.
did a cadence on my calendar so that it's there.
January 10th works for me.
Mrs. Phillips? does that
Works
work?
for me as well.
Mrs. Cowan? It works for
Fine
me as well.
I can do it. I will be cheering on the Aqua Knights from here, but I can do the 10th.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay,
There's a-
5:30.
5:30?
Is there anything that says it has to be on a Tuesday night or the same night we have a work session?
No, it's just for the convenience of being able to combine
mean,
meetings for us and the public.
As a board, we don't have to set to that. So Janelle, if you've got
No.
a conflict
Yeah.
that evening, we can.
I'm good.
Absolutely. You sure?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Sure. So with that will be, we'll call the roll here, but that was, we had this 10th at
The 10th at 5:30.
5:30?
And our next item would be to appoint President Pro Tem for January's organizational meeting. So because we have not decided on president, we will not have decided on president and vice president. Obviously, prior to that meeting, we need a president pro tem to run that meeting.
And at that meeting, we will decide on the president. Is that correct? Dan?
Yes, that's correct.
I will be the president pro tem because it's just for like 3 items until the president is elected. I can handle that.
You can handle that. Is everyone okay with that?
I
Yeah,
fully
okay.
support
I
Peggy in
think
that
you'll
role.
do a great job, Peggy.
And following that, we also need to appoint our Warren County Career Center board member for next year. Peggy, are you offering to volunteer again?
I'm
just putting you on the
offering to
spot?
volunteer again.
And again, I fully support you. Phillips in that role.
And again, I know you'll do a great job.
Absolutely, absolutely. Donna, you okay with that? as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I think they love her too. I
Yes,
think
they
they'd
do.
be
Yes.
very sad not to have Peggy there.
So with that, Mr. Morrow, looks like we have a roll call. I need a motion to approve these.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes,
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Groff.
Yes.
Next on the agenda are the legislative updates from Mr. Skrull.
So not a whole lot to report on. As we all know, it's been election season. So a lot of the legislators have been very active in their campaigns. But a couple items worth pointing out here. So the State Board of Education, their executive committee, they passed a resolution that would start the process of selecting a search firm to assist in hiring the state superintendent of public instruction. So that's been in the works for the past couple months, but they've finally passed it here in the past several weeks. And then also based on election results, we now have a new representative on the State Board of Education. It is now Kathleen Hoffman. She is where we had Jenny Kilgore prior.
Any questions for Mr. Squirrel?
No. I have a student achievement liaison date. And one of the things, thanks very much to the two high school young ladies, they presented lots of information that I had down. I want to follow some of that up when they talked about the students in the different sport areas and the cheerleaders and the dance team, that for those students, that's part of their educating the whole child. And I think it's so exciting to see that so many students have found a true love of doing different things in our district. And that's definitely high achievement to be able to have the good grades and then also dedicate so much time and work and energy into the activities that they really love. And then I also wanted to say, did you know that Haley Jones is a King's graduate? And she's also now a King's kindergarten teacher. That was highlighted in the night news. And I think it's another way of showing that the students that graduate from our high school realize what a wonderful education they've had, and they're giving back by graduating and then coming back to teach at King's. And the other one that I found very interesting, Mrs. Thomas had a tweet and she said, did you know that children can learn to read with bingo? I use the chips, and with some of the training that various teachers across the district have had on teaching reading, the students actually, they have 3 blocks and they scoot a chip up for every sound in the word that's written above, so they can sound the words out. And then after they present the 3 sounds, they slide all the chips off and say the word. And so that's just a tactile way, touching and moving on learning to read. And so I thought that was a wonderful little tweet that was out there.
And Mrs. Phillips, I apologize for jumping ahead and not giving you an opportunity to share.
It's okay.
And I
You're
forgot.
not going to keep me quiet.
Yeah. And so I also jumped ahead. There's a couple of things I wanted to say. I want to thank my colleagues, in administration. I know you all were attending the OSBA Capital Conference. It's just a wonderful opportunity to learn and grow, network, and really, endorse this district, represent this district. I actually got some text messages from people who had a chance to meet some of you, and they're like, they did a fine job. They're great. And, my response to that was, yeah, I know. Our superintendent, a lot of our admin team attend every year, and it's just always encouraging to see all the great things that school boards, administrations across the state of Ohio are doing for students. So I appreciate you all for going. And just to echo Mrs. Groff, I think everyone here, thanks to our community for your engagement. Election cycles are difficult. I know a lot of people look at it in terms of wins and losses. I don't look at it that way. It's about, what the community chose to do. One way or the other, we would continue to have a job to do and decisions to make. But, we had a significant voter turnout, a lot of engagement, and, it's, as Mrs. Groff mentioned, it's challenging, it's difficult. It's never easy to ask people to spend more money, but we really believe that it's in the best interest of the district, and we take that responsibility very seriously. So I wanted to thank you, the community, again for all of their participation in this election cycle. So I did not mean to skip over one. So if anyone else had items, and I did not ask. So
Actually, I do have one. So I do want to thank hopefully some of them are watching, the city council in South Lebanon for allowing myself and some of our administrators to go to their meeting a few weeks back where we celebrated Vina Chapman and her 100th birthday. Some of the stories that they told, and I had no idea that most of that council had her as a teacher or had been influenced by her at some point in their life. And it's just stories like that that I think are very inspiring, and that we need to focus on is just the impact that teachers have on the lives of our children and our students. And honestly, came out of there feeling very good. Just stories we don't hear like that, and things that we need to focus on. So I do want to say thank you for the invitation.
I have one other thing. I just want to pass out some information. A few months ago, we started talking about student representatives on the board, and I received some information from Centerville and what they're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Mrs.
yeah,
Phillips.
I've got my sheet. Yeah.
I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Belfram said about going to the conference the last few days. It was John and my first conference, and it was quite eye-opening. You don't realize how many districts, I mean, you hear 600 districts in the state of Ohio, but until you see 600 districts and 600 superintendents and 600
Times 5.
board members. Yeah, it was very eye-opening. And I just want to thank all of our employees, every single person, because you guys do a great job. The teachers just pour their hearts into our kids. And, we went to sessions talking about you had such a variety of things to go and listen to. And, just teachers all over this state are working so hard to educate our children. So it just makes you want to work harder for them. So thank you.
And Mr. Belfram, I just wanted to add to what you said about the election process, that just how impressive it was that 13,778 Kings School District residents participated.
Absolutely.
And thank you for providing that number to us, Ms. Morrow.
Yeah.
But that's just very impressive in a midterm election.
Yeah, absolutely. Next on the agenda, I need a motion to enter into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Skrull,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Mr. Belfram.
Yes. All right, coming out of executive session, I'd like a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting.
I will make that motion.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. Morrow,
Ms. Cowan,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Ms. Groff,
Yes.
Mr. Skirl,
Yes.
Mr. Belfrom.
yes. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.